This is Gala. She is a 13-year-old quarter horse cross Hanoverian, and here I'm doing my ridden submission for the Associate Training Programme. Starting off, stretching out in walk. Here I'm turning down the 3/4 line and just asking for a little bit of leg yield. I'm using my right leg to push her over and my left leg slightly further back as a guarding leg to prevent her from going too quickly. As I've mentioned already in the in-hand section, she can be quite a difficult horse to ride because she tends to be a little bit lazy, but her reaction to avoid stretching and working is to go a little bit too quick and to jog. So with her, the challenge is always to keep her going forward, but without her going too fast. Here I'm doing my second leg yield. She's already a little bit more relaxed. And there I'm getting a nice reaction from my leg aid. Perhaps coming across a little bit too quickly. But there you see she's starting to stretch and relax. And the stride length is a little bit longer and a little bit slower. As I'm on my own and I haven't got anyone to hold the video, the track that I'm taking around the arena is a little bit altered, just so that you can hopefully keeping within the screen of the video. So here I'm asking for a little bit of shoulder 4. So again, the same position with the legs. Your legs should be, there's 3 different types of leg aid that you give, either with your legs parallel, with your legs on a diagonal, so you've got your inside leg at the girth and your outside leg behind the girth. That was with the inside leg would then be pushing into your outside rein contact, but with your outside leg move back from the hip to work as a guarding leg to prevent them going over too quickly. And the third type of leg action is lifting your heels up and which is lifting their back up and just asking them to lift up and round. So in the lateral work, the leg aid is in the diagonal position. So I've asked for a little bit more shoulder in on this length. Again, I'm pleased with the reaction she gives me there. So when you're thinking about getting them to do the walk work, the mantra I try to keep in my head is that they have to be forwards and then stretch down. So without the forwards mobility, the stretching is not true. So you can teach a horse to lengthen its neck and go in a long outline, but unless it's forward first, it's not correct and it's not doing the stretch justice. So with her, as I've said, she can be very difficult to get her to go forward because it means she goes too quick. But unless she's going forwards first, the stretch she does is not correct. That was a bit of side pass I've asked for there. I was quite pleased with the reaction from my leg, although it wasn't a perfect attempt, but at the first attempt it wasn't too bad. Let's change the rein, so that's leg yielding over to the right. So although she hasn't, that stretch is better there, she hasn't fully stretched down at this point in time, because she's not truly forward. Well, she's coming forward, but she's still a little bit anxious with her paces. She's a horse who actually comes back and does the walk much better once she's worked through trot and canter. Here I'm asking for leg yield again. Quite pleased with her reaction from my leg, although my outside leg is not far enough back on that occasion. And as she progresses through the lateral work, her demeanour and her stride length is getting longer, her stretch is getting deeper, and the pace is getting a little bit slower. Leg yield across there. Again, I think a nice reaction to my leg. She's crossing across, the inside leg is there. You can clearly see it's coming across on the inside, which is what aids the lifting and the rounding of the back, is that engagement of that inside hind leg. And I think there she's really starting to use her back. You can see there's a bit more swing in her walk, a bit more stretch in the neck, and she's starting to really relax and use herself there. So here, shoulder in. Now I'm not actually for much angle there, but I'm quite pleased again with her reaction, because that inside hind is crossing over underneath her. And the stretch is just a little bit deeper. I'm turning down the centre line here, doing a half pass to the left. She's a little bit ahead of herself there, the forehand's coming over a bit too quickly. But again, I'm pleased with the response from my leg. So I'm changing the rein here just to try that half pass again. Now if it's not perfect, I don't worry about it. But what I'm looking for is a reaction from my leg aids, which I'm getting, so I'm pleased with that. Now she's crossing over nicely there, and she's staying, her front end wants to be leading, but she's staying much more parallel, which was better than the Now that's a much nicer stretch. We're now starting to get her shoulders moving at a similar rate to hindquarters. She is quite active behind, naturally, with her longer hind leg. She does tend to come through quite nicely behind, but I find that almost pushes her a little bit more onto her forehand and hurries her front legs. As you can see there, the activity from behind is good, but the front legs are just hurried on a little bit too much. And I think, leading on from the problems that we've had saddle fitting, because she has no shoulders, her shoulders that's the biggest problem that she's had, is that the activity in front has just been prevented. So there, I'm really pleased with that, because if I can get that activity with her front to match the activity from behind without too much speed, it starts becoming a really nice walk. And here, nice stretch. I'm just lifting my hands there with the weight of the rein so that my reins act as a chambon would, just to encourage her to come down and forward. So there we've gone into trot. And that starts off with a really nice stretch. Again, a reoccurring theme with her is that it's all a little bit too quick. Because she's a horse that doesn't allow me to use my leg or overreacts to my leg aids, the trap that I do fall into is not using my leg enough, which then means she's not active enough and she doesn't go forwards and down and take the stretch down. So in order to make the stretch as correct and as useful as I can, I really try and use my legs, and don't worry about her overreacting with the speed at this stage, because at least it gets her engaged, it gets her stretching, and then the speed is something I can address as we continue with the work. So here I am using my shoulders, just bringing my weight back a little bit, just to try and reduce the speed that she's working at. Here I'm asking for a leg yield, and that's a really nice reaction to my leg aid. And there she is, back into a nice stretch. So her reaction with her stretching at the moment is not consistent, but what I'm pleased about is it is coming from my leg, and she then takes the rein. She takes the rein from me and gives me a nice consistent feel down the bridle. So when she is stretching, she's creating that stretch. She's taking the rein and she's giving me a real positive contact. She doesn't have the greatest paces in the world, but I think it's quite a good indication with her is that she gets that nice bouncy trot, but only when she goes correctly. So it's very black and white with her. With some of my other horses who are much bigger moving, even when they're not correctly balanced between hand and leg, they still give you that really big trot. So you can get away with it when it's not as good as it should be, whereas Gala is a much clearer indication of when she's working correctly, because that's the only time when you get that swingy, bouncy trot. Still a nice stretch there with a very open throat. She's carrying her tail. It is still a little bit quick, but as I said earlier, it's the correctness, the engagement, the forward movement and the stretch that is the first first thing that I'm looking for, and the speed is something that I can adjust at a later date, but you can't get it correct until you've got the basics of being forward in the stretch first. So now that we're sort of further down the line and I've been riding her for a while, I'm now able to engage much more leg. And again, she's taking the rein down and forwards there really nicely, giving me a positive contact. So she is between hand and leg. So when it becomes erratic and she comes back at me, I just shorten my range. You can see me doing it there. Just keep my leg on and just ask her to stretch again. So then I just allow the reins to feed back through my hands there, so that that's it there. So when she comes up, I just shorten my reins, keep my leg on, and just keep asking for that stretch. Asking her to leg yield there. Now, what you saw me doing there is just correcting her, because I asked her to move across. She kind of, rather than moving across sideways, she was leaning a bit on her right shoulder. So I just used my outside rein and came out of the leg yield and just asked her to go straight, just so she wasn't just doing a sideways drift. And I was pleased with her reaction, because I just used my outside rein just to say, "Oi, you're not going through the shoulder," and straight away she responded to that and came off that right shoulder and went straight. Here I'm asking for a little bit of shoulder in. Which she did nicely. She wasn't as much angle as it could have been, but the difference it's made to a trot afterwards, you can see there she came out, the stretch was better, more spring in her step. So here I'm just using a couple of circles to try and get her to just slow down a little bit. Shoulder in down that long side. I think that's shoulder 4, you can just about tell. And that was much better because she stayed in the stretch through the shoulder in. Now she's just lost her balance, so she came out there. And as I said earlier, her conformation is such that she's a quarter horse and she has quite a long hind leg, so going on a forehand is something that is almost unavoidable for her due to her conformation. So the action of bringing her weight back onto her hind leg is much harder than a horse that is built much more uphill, obviously. So the degree that her hindquarters have to work and lower than the joints is much more much greater. So therefore I think it's more imperative that the work that you do is correct, and it's going to be a harder task for her to do the engaged work as she progresses in her training. So here I'm just using a few turns, changes of direction, just to get her to just slow down a little bit and not rush. And I'm just asking for a few steps of leg yield and shoulder in on the turn. See there, it's a little bit slower. Still good activity. There we go. Just a bit slower. You can see when she stretches, she takes the rein down and forward, and she gives you that nice, there, she's got that open throat, so the head is in front of the vertical. Then she loses her balance and sort of curls back on herself a little bit, and then lifts her head, and so I shorten my reins and then just ask for the same again. There, a few nice strides there, and then the same process. I shorten my reins, keep asking her forward. There she goes again. There. So it's a process that just keep doing, just keep shorten my reins, don't worry about it, and just keep my leg on. There you go again, and she takes the rein, and it is the weight of the rein, so it is within a contact. It's so, I think, difficult when you first start learning this process to have that feeling of taking the rein down and forward and the horse taking the contact for you. You're not taking the rein at all. The horse dictates the contact. You're just there to take up the slack, keep your leg on, keep them going forwards, and then just keep asking them to take the rein from you. So when she lifts her head a bit higher, all I do is lift my hands a bit higher, just taking up the slack and creating that lift in the corner of her mouth, which should ask her, there you go, to stretch down. There you can see me just lifting my hands, which is the equal and opposite reaction. So the lifting of your hands lifts the corner of her mouth, which she should then move into the pressure and lower her head. Now, she's quite well balanced in her canter, but she's a little bit more on her forehand. She's not as developed in her stretch in the canter as she is in the trot. So here I use leg yielding on a circle in the canter, and I'm using my weight to bring my shoulders back and lighten the weight on her back, and just asking her to extend that stretch down. You can see the engagement from behind is good, but she's still a little bit laboured on the forehand. But it's getting better. It's only relatively recently that I felt that she's been stretching correctly in the canter. So the lightening of the forehand will come, because, as I say again, conformationally, she's always going to find working uphill more difficult. But she's taking that stretch down, so I'm pleased with that. You know, she's taken the contact. There is a contact there. She's light on her feet. She's staying upright, so you're not seeing her leaning on the corners. And the quality of the trot when she makes the transition is nice and quite consistent. Still a little bit quick, but the consistency there, transition was not too bad, and the consistency of the trot work is better, and she's really stretching down there. And really nice springy steps. So there she's done pretty much a figure of 8 without coming up out of the stretch, without losing her balance, and just stretching down further. So that's, for her, is the best it gets at this moment, so I'm pleased with that. Nice open throat, head definitely in front of the vertical, and you can see there she's taking the contact. There isn't, my reins aren't slack, that is a contact between me and her, but it's in a nice long outline. So again, I keep the canter on the circle and I do my leg yielding on the circle. All again with her to create the reduction in speed. I really like this exercise as well because you can just, it's something that you can take away and use in tests as well, because you can just ask for a few strides of leg yield one way and then a few strides of leg yield the other way. And as you progress in your training, I find that's something that's really useful just to keep their attention, is that you can just use your legs independently. So you just a tap with your outside leg just to make sure that they're with you, and then a tap from the inside leg just to say, come on. And it's something that judges can't see you doing, but it's still having a conversation. It just keeps them upright in their upright balance and straight. So I'm using the hip thrusting again there. So I'm bringing my weight forward in the saddle, lifting my bottom off the saddle as much as possible, and using my shoulders just to lighten, and asking her just to stretch a little bit deeper. And there she goes. There, you can see she's doing it and taking the contact again. So this is the range she finds a lot easier. So I'd say on the left rein, the stretch is still not really there, and she tends to go more on a forehand, whereas I think we're getting a little bit better on this right rein. Just sort of thinking shoulder 4 in the canter there down the long side. So that's a nice stretch again, taking the rein, and I felt like that was a bit better on the horizontal balance. She didn't look to be on her forehand there. Again, I'm using my shoulders and my weight to lighten my seat. Bit of a long uncoordinated transition to trot, but at least the trot once I got there is good. Tiltet's taking that stretch nicely. Recurring theme, but still a little bit on the quick side, but now here I've gone into sitting trot, just working towards doing more of her working gaits. Oh, my half chap was falling down. Bit of shoulder 4 here. I think she's lost some of the spring in her trot. It's not as light on her feet. Just asking for a bit of half pass there. And then back down to the stretch. And the speed is improving a little bit. Not quite so quick. She is a horse who's been incredibly difficult in terms of saddle fitting, and she has been my guinea pig really, so she does tend to have to be the one that I learn on. I'm pleased with that there. In this, she has no shoulders and her saddles. The difficulty is always getting the gullet wide enough to allow for her muscles to work and let her stretch, but then because she has no shoulders, saddles tend to go forwards. She has been one that has been benefiting from my head plates that I designed for the Wow saddles. I extended the range of widths in each angle, so without the head plates that I designed, I would be stuck with this mare because she's just so narrow. And I say, because she's got no shoulders, it's always been a toss-up between getting enough width for muscle development, but without it then going forwards over her shoulders. And now that's back to the walk work. And now that we're in walk, having done the trot and canter, it's much slower. With a nice stretch, good movement of her shoulders, good activity. And then she just gets even deeper So lovely walk there.